Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I'm Phil Moeller, and I'm going to talk to you today about taking ownership in our lives and, more importantly, clarifying when we should take ownership and when we should let no. We've all heard the phrase maybe from Jocko Willink's recent book, Discipline Equals Freedom. And I want to talk about what that means. Being purposeful provides freedom. But I think getting clarity on what we are responsible for and what we own ultimately can give us freedom by doing what we can control, but also letting go of other things. So there's multiple elements and layers of this that I want to talk through today. We've all been in situations, maybe we've been on a team, maybe we've been in a relationship, whatever it might be, where we feel like we just don't have control of the situation. So maybe there's a team member at work, in your business, whatever it might be, that just won't step up, won't get their responsibilities done. And it can cause frustrations. Maybe we blame them. Maybe we make excuses for them. Maybe we whine about what they're doing. And it just wears us out, right? And I want to help think through and pull from different people that I've learned lessons from, whether I worked with them directly or from the books I've read about them or movies I've watched, whatever it might be, to help kind of talk through this. I'm going to pull from, first of all, one person, Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela wrote the book Long Walk for Freedom. If you're on YouTube or video, you can see it here on my bookshelf. But Nelson Mandela was in South Africa. He was a political activist fighting for freedoms. And he actually was in prison for 27 years because of his activism and his just mission, what he had, his beliefs, fighting for his beliefs, fighting for what his mission was. He was in prison for 27 years. During that time, he continued to learn and grow and focus on what he controlled and he was clear on what he owned and could control. And he was able to let other things go. So I want to use him as an example. By the way, he eventually became South Africa's first democratically elected president. So he went from prisoner to president, which is just a remarkable story. And I'd encourage you, if you're interested in history or things like that, to check out his book, Long Walk for Freedom. Another book, and gentlemen, I'll pull from during this discussion, is Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. So Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor and actually gleaned a lot of his teachings after he was in the concentration camps from that. He learned a lot from that, and then he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, and he just has some great lessons that he learned when he was in the most horrific situations that one could imagine. John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach from the 70s, probably the greatest basketball coach of all time. I'll talk a little bit, reference some of his teachings and what he talks about in his book, Wooden. Tim Kite was a leadership coach for me when I was in the corporate world. He was the leadership coach for the Buckeyes football team when they won the national championship. An amazing individual. I had him on my podcast about a year ago and just has had so much impact on so many different people. Another gentleman is Jocko Willink. He wrote the book Extreme Ownership. So that's where the quote, discipline equals freedom comes from. Jocko was a Navy SEAL and has had a lot of influence on leadership, especially leadership in business. We'll pull some from quotes from him with regard to that. We'll actually reference a book, 4 Disciplines of Execution, that I read about business and how to get teams and developing people and engaging employees, and some terms that they use around what we own and what we control and what we don't. So again, I'll pull from those different resources as we talk through really 10 lessons for what we need to take ownership of in our lives and what we need to let go of to really give us the freedom that we all can get if we focus on ourselves and what we can control. So the first lesson is that we do not control our circumstances. We do not control what happens to us. So obviously, if you look at someone like Nelson Mandela, who he was in a very challenging environment, challenging country, a lot of division, a lot of divisiveness. He was in prison for 27 years, so he clearly did not have total control of the movement he was doing. He was acting from prison. So he didn't have control of his circumstances clearly. So I think Nelson Mandela had 2 quotes that I think are profound for this lesson. His first one is, Mandela stated, "I realized that they could take everything from me except my mind and my heart. They could not take those things. Those things I still had control over, and I decided not to give them away." So I think that's a profound example from Nelson Mandela. The other thing he said, which is is I think really important is as I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead me to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. And Mandela talks a lot about forgiveness. And I think forgiveness is an important part of not blaming others, not complaining, not making excuses, not defending. But if you forgive people, that can be very, very freeing. And as Mandela said, if he didn't let go and he didn't forgive, he would still be in prison. Viktor Frankl, obviously he didn't have control of his situation, or he would have not been in the concentration camp in the Holocaust. So he didn't have control. So lesson number 2, what we can control is our attitude and our response in any given situation. So Nelson Mandela he was on a mission. He stuck to his principles and he fought for freedom from behind bars. So he could do what he could to control it. That maybe took longer than it would normally, but he did everything he could within his control. Viktor Frankl controlled his attitude, what he did while he was in the concentration camps. And he said, really, his quote, I'll read it here, but the last of the human freedoms is choosing one's attitude. We can always control our attitude. We cannot always control the circumstances that we're in. But he's like, we can always control our attitude. Tim Kite, if I pull from him, he has R factor is their training model. Event plus response equals outcome. So the first two, we don't control events or circumstances, but we do control our response, and taking a disciplined approach to that is what Tim Kite talked about. He has a quote, Tim Kite does, I am not my circumstances, I am my choices. So that really exemplifies lesson number 1 and number 2. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control and choose how we respond. Tim Kite, by the way, learned a lot, and he credits a lot of his teachings from both John Wooden and the book Man's Search for Meaning from Viktor Frankl. So again, number 1 of the 10 lessons about taking ownership is that we don't control our circumstances. And number 2, we can control our attitude and our response in any given situation. Number 3 is about who we are and what our identity is tied to. And I think what's important here is that we are not our circumstances. We are not our results. We are what we do. So we are our attitude. We are our decisions. Tim Kite referenced that I'm not my circumstances, but I am my choices. And that's a great transition to number 3. Who we are, our identity, we can define what we want that to be, but really how people look at us and what our identity really is. And you can go as deep as you want with this, but it's tied to what we do. It's not tied to what happens to us. It's not tied to the results we get. There might be an indication, they might be feedback to us in some way, but they don't define who we are. What defines who we are is what we do ourselves. And that's what we can control. And the great thing is we can completely control that. We can control who we are because we can control what we do. So that should be exciting. That should be freeing, knowing we aren't dependent on our circumstances or our outcomes. We are free knowing we have control of the situation as long as we control what we do. So the 4th lesson that I have is when we set goals, when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do at the beginning of the year, by quarter, by month, for the week, whatever that might be. And this can be in every area of life, including, of course, business. But when we're setting goals, we should be looking at what we can control, not what results we want. The results we want might be an input to our goals, right? So if we want to I'll use a business example here. If I want to have X million dollars of acquisitions, okay, that's my goal. That's my outcome that I want. But the measure that I want to, the goal I want to set is imagine a funnel here in this situation, but how many phone calls do I need to make to get to that goal? Or how many letters of intent or LOIs do I need to write to get to that goal? And if I do those things within my control, I will have a better chance of hitting the result I want, but I only can control so I'll now reference the book 4 Disciplines of Execution, what they talk about as lead measures and lag measures. So we need to set goals around the lead measures that then the results come from. So we can also apply this to health. Let's say, okay, I want to lose weight, or I want to have more energy for my kids. That might be the result I want, But the lead measure that I control is I'm going to not eat dinner and I'm not going to eat anything after 6 p.m. Or I'm going to make sure I get 7.5 or 8 hours of sleep. Or I'm going to limit how much I drink on a weekend at any given time to 3 drinks. Or, I'm going to work out 3 or 4 days a week. I can control those things and they give me a better chance at getting the result of what I want and what my purpose for my health is. But I want to focus on the lead measures and set goals around lead measures, not lagging measures, as they talk about in the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution. And that's a business book, but we can apply this again to business, to health, to our faith, to our relationships, to all these different areas of life. I think John Wooden said this well, and why we should set goals for what we control. He said, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you did your best to become the best you are capable of becoming. And I think that's our goal, is we want our identity to be the best that it can be. We want to be the best that we can be. And if we just focus on what we do, we know we can have peace of mind. Number 5, the fifth lesson on, taking what we take ownership, what we take control of, is we can't get too high or too low on the results we get. So if we're just getting phenomenal results all the time, that doesn't define who we are. It might be it's feedback and an indication of who we are. And the better at that what we do, the better lead measures, if you want to call it that, the better our response, the better we are at those things, we are more likely to get better results. For sure, that's true. However, there are circumstances and things we don't control. So don't get too high if we get great results, or don't get down on ourselves if we get bad results, right? But focus on, are we doing the right things? And then based on the results we get, use that as feedback and adjust and adapt. But don't get too emotionally high or low on the results. Focus on the process. You've heard that before. So that's number 5, is don't get too high or too low on the results. Number 6, and Viktor Frankl talks about this a lot in his writings, but find meaning in owning your challenges, find meaning in your setbacks, find meaning in your sufferings. I can relate to some different stories where I've had different challenges, maybe in my business where I did a bad deal, or I made a mistake with an employee, or whatever it might be. Look at those things as lessons that we learned and find meaning in those. How we frame things is everything. So if we find meaning in our setbacks, in our failures, in our challenges that we have, maybe it's, hey, God put this situation in front of me because I just needed to be humbled, or God put this situation in front of me because he wanted me to learn that lesson because it was on a small deal, and next time I didn't make that mistake when it was on a big deal. But find meaning in your challenges, in your setbacks. And if you have that frame of reference, I just think you have the faith, you have the courage to pursue things so much more. Nelson Mandela also talked about finding purpose in his struggles, even during his imprisonment. He used his suffering to say, okay, are you going to do these things to me? This is going to inspire me more to fight harder. So Nelson Mandela, again, he used the challenges and setbacks that other people, the circumstances that he was in, as fuel and as fire to pursue his mission even more. Number 7, and this is really important, but you are unique and you are created for some definite purpose. And we might not know what that is. I talk about trying to define our purpose, but we might not know. We don't really know what that is. We never will know that until hopefully, after we pass away. Hopefully we're in heaven, and hopefully we learn that someday. But we will never know during this lifetime what our full purpose is. But really, plant the seeds, do the good things, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't think about what that might be and pursue that. I think that's what's important, is what do you think your purpose is? What do you think your mission might be? Think about this in different areas of life and go pursue those things. Trust that there is a plan, that but understand you are unique in many ways and you have a specific God-given purpose. And I think that's just so important. My mission is to inspire and educate others to live their God-given purpose. That's what I think my mission is. That's my mission to the best of my knowledge. I won't truly know my whole mission and what that is in this lifetime, but I'm pursuing that mission, if that makes sense. And if you do that, if you apply these things, the next one is the real freedom to understanding what you own and what you don't own is controlling what you do and who you are, knowing that you don't control your circumstances and you don't control your results, but just control who you are and what you do and leave the rest to God. Just trust that there's a bigger plan and really just let go and trust God that things will be okay, right? That, the things that will happen to you, you'll figure out how to respond to them, or the results that you get, there's a reason for those results, and just trust that there's a bigger plan that you don't know about. So that's number 8. Number 9, and I've referenced this a little bit, but is that this framework, this idea of what we own and what we don't, this applies to every single area of life. So number 9 is this applies to every single one of your areas of life. However you think about different areas of life, if you think about faith, family, finance, and fitness, I think about faith, I think about health, I think about relationships, I think about fulfilling work. Like those are kind of my buckets. But, an easy way is faith, family. But this applies, this concept, these lessons apply to every single area of life. So you need to take ownership of what you do, of who you are, not the circumstances you're in, not the results you get, but of what you do and who you are. And again, those other things can be feedback to you, but they don't define you. And last thing is, we talked about it on the first solo episode that I did, but applying the framework, the 5 keys to success that we talk about within the purpose matrix: purpose, education, association, courage, and example. And applying these, and what's important is set goals around this, but do this for every single area of life. If you grow your mindset to be able to be better suited to handle different situations, or if you're clear on what your purpose is, and grow your mindset through education and association, you are going to have the courage to act, to do the right thing. What we don't want is we don't want cowards. Our society does not need more cowards today. We need more people with courage to pursue what you think your mission is, what you think your purpose is, and really just controlling who you are and what you do. Again, those are my 10 lessons for what to own, what not to own. The first one is we do not control our circumstances. The second one, we can control our attitude and our response in any given situation. Number 3, who we are, our identity, is based on what we do. And our circumstances and results do not define that, but it's just what we do. That's our identity. Number 4, we need to set goals around what we do and what we can control. Number 5, don't let your results, good or bad, influence how you feel too much or too little. If you have great results or bad results, don't let that control you too much. Number 6, find meaning in your challenges, in your setbacks, in your sufferings, whatever that is. Number 7, you are created, you are unique, you are created for some definite purpose. That is a big teaching of Viktor Frankl. Number 8, trust God with the rest. Number 9, apply this to every area of life. And number 10, use the 5 elements of success from the purpose matrix, the PEACE acronym, to help set that. And that's really the call to action today is if you're, let's just say family is a top priority for you right now, or faith is, or maybe one of these areas of life you feel like are out of whack or are slipping or just aren't where you want them to be. Take that area of life and try to get clear. Okay, what do I think my purpose is? How can I educate myself? Who can I associate with? Who can help me? What courageous things do I need to do to take ownership of this? How can I be an example? How can I be a leader in this area of life? So if there's an area of life that you're struggling with and you feel like you need to get this back on the right track, maybe that's your health. But if there's something that you feel like you got to work on, apply these 5 principles. Focus on what you do. The results will come, but focus on what you can do and what you can control, because that's who you are. So I want to thank you for allowing me to spend the time talking through these 10 lessons on what to own and what to let go of. I really appreciate you supporting us. Please leave a review, subscribe, check us out on YouTube as well. We're going to do more video content there. Thanks so much for everything. For the Purpose Matrix, this is Phil Moeller signing off.